Okie dokie, so welcome everybody. My name is Peter. I'll be leading tonight's session. I'll be actually away the next 2 weeks, so the next 2 weeks some of the other residents will be leading Sunday sits and we'll get more diversity and not have to hear me talk about the same thing each time. I look forward to not being here and we gain to experience other teachers. So I think tonight the subject of the email was something around waking up the heart of compassion. This is a topic that's been on my mind for many, many years. In graduate school, I was very interested in philosophy and religion, and I went to a master's program to study philosophy and religion. And I primarily studied Buddhism, which no surprise, and existentialism, which arguably is a very influential way of looking at things that dominates a lot of Western culture in the later half of the 20th century. Thinkers like Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and Sartre and Heidegger and these types of people kind of make up the school of existentialism, and people kind of have a very loose understanding. Something about God is dead, and you can do whatever you want, and something like that. Seemingly meaningless kind of existence pervades this kind of philosophy, at least on the first read of it. And as a young 21-year-old, it was very attractive philosophy for me. And I particularly studied Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, who is one of the most popular existentialists. And he is famous for saying existence precedes essence, which is not what most human thinkers said for many millennia. He basically said that your existence is before meaning. That up until then, whether you're in Christianity or Buddhism or Taoism or any philosophy, there was always an inherent order of things. There's a meaning, there's a truth, and we have to learn what it is or find out what that is from your priest or whoever your spiritual leader is and then follow it. And these guys are saying, no, actually, there's no inherent meaning to the world. There's no inherent truth. There's no great cosmic thing that you have to discover. It's all just meaningless, and most of us don't want to face that fact, and so we give away our power to other people or institutions to tell us what to do. But in reality, you need to become courageous and live with the fact that there is no inherent meaning, and you have to create your own meaning. And to a large degree, this is, I would say, a huge part of modern religion. That anyone that goes to college, or anyone that's in the ages 10 to 40, I think, grew up with this religion, that when you were born, you could become anything, that there's no preset destiny of who you are or what you're supposed to do, that you have your own unique gift and you need to figure out what that is and do it. The only difference is maybe that existentialists were more extreme in that, no, there's actually nothing to find, you're just making it up, and that's that. In a positive way, they emphasize a lot about personal responsibility, taking responsibility for your life rather than blaming others. They emphasize, as human beings, we have the freedom to choose, to ascribe meaning, to put meaning onto things. I think for most of us, this is kind of just common sense to us these days, but it was pretty radical at the time. But when we wear these sashes, for example, there's nothing inherently meaningful about this sash. It wasn't handed down by God or something. So you just through iteration over many years or months came up with that Westerners were freaked out when you wore the full Zen guard, and rather than demonstrating and giving off the impression that he's friendly and someone you can come to talk to, it alienated him and made people feel weird around him. So he did a few iterations until he came up with Sash that was enough to demonstrate I'm different, but not so different that it scared people away. And so at the Monastic Academy, we also have iterated through many dress codes and came down to, okay, we'll wear these gray sashes. But each resident in the community itself puts meaning onto these sashes. For some people, this sash can just feel like an annoying dress code burden. It's like, I don't want to do this, but if I want to be in the community, I have to wear it, and someone will yell at me if I don't wear it when I'm supposed to. So I'll put up with it. For other people, this sash can mean a lot. This symbolizes, oh, I'm part of the community. I've set a commitment for the time that I'm here to dedicate myself to realizing the truth and serving other people. That this is a symbol of my commitment and a symbol of me being part of a team, working for the good of the world. But these are, as human beings, meanings we put onto things. What I didn't like about existentialism was that although in practicality most of the existentialists were actually big freedom fighters, a lot of them were involved in the resistance in World War II, fighting against the Nazis, or they were in Algiers, fighting against colonialism. It didn't really philosophically make sense, logically make sense. If everyone is free, there's no inherent meaning to things. Each human being puts meaning onto our own lives and onto everything, really. Why should we care about each other? Where does the ethics come into play? Where does the morality come into play? Where does caring about your fellow human being come into play? Sartre, for him, his last work that he never finished was the Notebooks on Ethics. He was trying to write a book on bridging this gap between saying this is the way things are, everything is inherently meaningless, and we as human beings ascribe meaning to things. And then he was trying to make the leap of, okay, and this is why you should fight for the freedom of all other people. Why freedom is the most important value that we should all care about and fight for each other. And in my view, he never really finished that project. And so as part of my graduate studies, I took that question up for myself, which was a very personal question for me of, should I really even care about anyone else? Because default operating procedure, it seems like for our culture, is care to the extent that it's convenient, and then don't for most of us. It's sort of a prevailing norm. So, but I was raised Catholic and Christian and had good Confucian values, so it seemed important to care about people, and it seemed like inherently it did matter. But I didn't really have a philosophical understanding, conceptual framework, why it mattered. And so I was studying this, and then I studied Buddhism, hoping Buddhism would give me an answer. And give you the spoiler conclusion, when I was 23, the conclusion I came to was just not very satisfying, but at the time I thought I was smart, that if you take on the Buddhist point of view, that self and other is also just a meaning that we ascribe into our perception, and that there is no inherent self, no inherent other, then the boundary of caring about myself and caring about you kind of falls apart. Or even just practically speaking, my freedom is contingent and dependent on the freedom of other people. That if other people are not free, it's very likely that I won't be free. And so just to survive and thrive in the world, it makes sense to care about each other's freedom. And to some extent, that was conceptually really nice, and I liked it. I was always kind of dissatisfied by that answer. And it's interesting because in the last week, we just finished a circling interpersonal meditation retreat where we basically spend time with each other, trying to practice mindfulness and also notice what naturally arises in connection with each other. And a lot of good things come up, and a lot of not so pleasant things come up when you spend time with each other. And sometimes it can cause friction. And one evening I was talking to one of the guests who had never been there before, did not really know us, heard about us through a podcast, and decided to spend money and fly across the country to spend a week with us. I was really impressed. I was like, oh, I can't believe you did that. It's a lot of faith. And I was telling him about my grad school project. He also had studied philosophy in college, so we bonded on that. And he's also a school teacher and everything. And then he asked me, so what's your answer now? And I said, it turns out, when I really examine it, it just turns out that I do care. Truth is that I just do care. I don't really need a philosophical understanding of why I should care about other people. It just turns out that I do. Sometimes I wish I didn't, and I still do. Even when I numb it out, or repress it, or try to run away from it, it's still there. In some shape or form, I'm still caring about others or myself. And during the circling retreat, it often becomes obvious to me that we also care about each other, oftentimes even when we don't want to, even when we don't know how to help each other, even when we wish other people would just be okay and can't stand being around them. But even that's predicated on caring about the person. I might feel helpless or scared or hopeless about helping this person, not knowing how to be or relate with this person, might be scared of showing my vulnerability with this person. But the fact of the matter is, this person still impacts me and I still impact this person, and we still care about each other, even when we wish we didn't. Which can be good news, which is basically, unlike existentialism, is saying that whether it's evolution or Christian gods or, Buddhist cosmology or something, in my experience, in my empirical experience, examining my own experience, looking at my own mind, and observing other people, the conclusion I've drawn is that everyone just does care about each other, even when it looks like we don't. The reason why we often fight the most with the people, the times we fight the most and are most reactive and triggered, are usually with the people that we love the most, that we care about the most, who we're the most vulnerable to, and who our defenses are most open with. And so, it seems like that's just true, that we just are social beings that care about each other, that are connected to each other, that are impacted by each other. Which in a lot of ways is not really the, I wish they taught that more everywhere. It doesn't seem to be the norm on social media or the way we consume entertainment or the way we relate in community anymore. A lot of it seems to be all about individualism and empowering ourselves, and to a large degree that community and family and other people kind of burdensome, and trying to find perfect partner or perfect community or perfect coworker or boss or whatever, rather than taking on this other view that I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, I have hopes and dreams, I have suffered and had joys, you have suffered and had joys. All of us are the same in having experienced these things, on having parents, on having friends, on having grieved, on having lost, on having received unexpected gifts from people, sharing a laugh. These are very basic experiences that we all share. And seeing that common humanity rather than the differences that often separate us. And coming to the realization that what most of us, whether revolution or the devil or something, of trying to seek out my own pleasure and run away from anything that's uncomfortable or not enjoyable, is not a sustainable path. To a large degree, the last several hundred years have brought about a lot of good things for science and technology to give us comforts and more power in a lot of ways. And we look down on things like Catholicism and Christianity for putting us down or something. But no matter how much technology we have, and no matter how much empowerment we do, when we really examine, we can see no matter how much pleasure I seek, and no matter how much discomfort I try to pay away or run away from, that is not a sustainable path. And then ultimately all of us get sick, ultimately all of us die, that the loved ones we have will get sick and die. And oftentimes, rather than enjoying the moment that we're in, enjoying the friendships that we do have around us, we're trying to maximize tomorrow, pleasure, or chase a high from yesterday, rather than just accepting how things are right now and enjoying what that is. So in classical Buddhism, the path is very clear. You come across teaching, you maybe come across a teacher if you're lucky, and you hear these teachings. It's finally someone who's speaking the truth that no one else is willing to say, or doesn't know, is not even aware that they can say it or that's even true. And something sparks in you and you realize, oh, that's true. I didn't even know that was true, or I've always known it was true, but I thought I was alone in this. Thank God there's someone else that's willing to do this, to say this, to feel this, to walk this, and then realizing that the way we've been going about things isn't sustainable, isn't necessarily bad, but it's just not going to take us where we ultimately really want to go. And so, out of that disillusionment, out of that acknowledging of the way that I was taught to do things isn't going to work, out of that sense of disillusionment, sort of swallowing the red pill in the matrix, you're willing to try something else. In Buddha's time, that would mean taking on the vows and following the Buddha, becoming a renunciate, and becoming a nun or a monk, and dedicating your life to the path. But for all of us here, that can be as simple as just setting the intention of I'm going to do what's real, and I'm going to do what's true, and I'm going to set my goals on doing that. And if it's true that we already care about each other, that we're already connected, hopelessly connected already, then part of that work is going to be caring for others and myself, because that's just seemingly true. Each of you can and probably should investigate that for yourself, but in my life, each time I examine it, especially the times when I wish it wasn't true, it just turns out to be true. So each of you can do your own examination and investigation on that. And so, in the later school of Mahayana Buddhism, the more East Asian Buddhism, although it started in India, the idea of the Bodhisattva, the being who isn't just seeking enlightenment so that they can escape from the world and suffering, but is actually working for the good of all beings, who says, makes the vow, I will not leave this plane of existence until all beings are liberated first. This is a great moment in spiritual history when a group of people are now having this ideal archetype of someone who is committing what is arguably an impossible vow. I am going to postpone my own enlightenment, my own full awakening for everyone else first. I am willing to suffer and go through anything, whether it's pleasure and joy or pain and suffering. Whatever the experience is, I'm gonna take on that before I know what it is, and I'm committing to doing that Buddhist cosmology through countless lifetimes. And they use the word bodhicitta, which is composed of two words, bodhi, which is awakening or clear mind, enlightenment, chitta, which is, sadly, English doesn't have a good translation for it, but it's kind of like heart or mind, heart-mind. Don't know why in Western philosophy they separate the heart and mind. A lot of Asian philosophies, that's not a separation they do. So, the awakened mind, the awakened heart. And with that awakening of the bodhicitta, the person sets the aspiration that I will seek enlightenment for the sake of all beings, all living beings. And I'm setting that as my first intention, my first goal. Not family, not wealth, not respect, not fame, not being around people I like and not being around people I don't like, not having good food or having enjoyable days or something, but I'm going to set that as my primary goal, first and foremost. And this is an experience that all of us may have already had, and it's an experience you can have, that setting the intention of, I clearly see there's a lot of suffering in the world, that there's a lot of human-made disasters just waiting to happen. Can't wait for some savior, president, or leader figure to come along and do the good work for us. I'm going to do my part and dedicate myself to doing whatever I can in service of truth and service to others. For me personally, there was a lot of resistance to making that kind of vow or setting that kind of intention. And with that resistance came a lot of suffering. But in actuality, once you actually make the intention, in my experience, it's actually very enjoyable and finally relieving. So I think deep down, that's actually what each of us wants to do anyway, but have a lot of doubts or hesitation that that's real, that's realistic. I might be setting myself up to chase after a dead end. Why not just settle for watching a good movie each week and going out to dinner once a week to have some fun? Why not just settle for that? Don't try to set lofty goals. But in fact, my experience is that each of us, again, does care. And it really actually does hurt to see people we care about, to see any being suffering. And so when we finally are in alignment with what's true, with what reality is like, that I do care. I want to at least acknowledge that I care, and then actually commit to doing something about it. Then the river inside of us can flow naturally. Then it's great. This heart of compassion is awakened, and it includes us, includes other beings, includes all things. Just like any spiritual tradition, whether it's Christ, Buddha, or Lao Tzu, or Krishna, or whatever, this basic truth of letting go of this limited idea of me and mine and I, and surrendering to a greater love, committing to a greater love, first on faith and then in actual experience, is arguably the teaching of most, if not all, of the traditions. And that it doesn't have to be this suffering, terrible burden that some later traditions started teaching, but it's actually joyous. As Shinzen would say, there is no greater joy than being able to meet someone in suffering, and then through the confidence and experience of your mindfulness, able to help them get out of suffering. If you had the superpower that you could meet any person in the world and then help them get out of suffering, would there be anything more enjoyable than waking up each day and meeting someone and saying, not only am I going to help you get out of suffering, but I want to teach you how to get out of your own suffering yourself, and then you can help other people get out of suffering. So like Jesus teaching a person how to fish. What would be better than that? That'd be the best. Then I could be surrounded by all the people I care about, that I already do care about, and we're all not needlessly suffering, and have the courage and confidence and the trust and the faith that we can do that. The one thing that I see in the circling retreat that we do is the greatest form of suffering when I do those kinds of retreats, or when I get hopeless or helpless or doubting that I can ever actually meet this person, that this person will ever be okay, or that I will ever be able to be okay with this person, or that I can feel my heart shutting off being with this person because I don't want to feel their suffering. For me, consistently, that's the hardest part of the circling retreat, and usually reveals to me where I'm still stuck and where I'm still grasping to, I want to have a pleasant experience, I don't want to have unpleasant experiences. So, this is an experience that we can all cultivate. This bodhicitta is the foundation for a lot of the Mahayana Buddhist practice that, to a large degree, if it was just up to my own life, I probably wouldn't have enough energy or intention or motivation to awaken. But when I include my nephew and nieces and my parents and my brother, all the residents and apprentices and community members, all my friends, seeing the state of the world and the nuclear war and the global warming and artificial AI and all the many possible problems and all the people in the world, that's hopefully enough inspiration, enough motivation to want to do something. And maybe it's not, I don't have enough for myself, but for the sake of everyone else, we can do what we can do to get more clear, to be more compassionate, to be more open, to be more willing to experience whatever is happening, whether that's endless joy and bliss, which for some of us, including myself, is terrifying, or hellish, terrible discomfort, resistance, which for a lot of us, including myself, we also don't want to experience. Great. So, with that, let's begin our practice. Begin by settling in, putting yourself in good posture, letting your weight of your body sink into the chair or the floor. If you don't have any physical ailments, trying to have a straight back. Letting your body relax. Having an open heart, an open chest. Letting yourself be vulnerable to being touched by the world. you wish, you can begin by setting the intention that for this next hour or so, we're going to work on practicing truth, practicing service, for the sake, if not just for my own life, then for the sake of everyone I love and all the beings in the universe. I'm going to give myself over to this practice for this amount of time. Whether I'm having a good experience or whether I'm having a bad experience, whether it feels pleasant or unpleasant, I'm going to take on this experience for the sake of everyone. People in this room, and more largely the family, friends, and everyone I know. Set the context for this practice as meaningful for the world, not just yourself. Take a moment and bring to mind the challenges, the troubles, the pains, the suffering that perhaps you've experienced or people you know have experienced. The loss, the grief, the heartbreak. Each of us have experienced this or know loved ones who have experienced loss and grief. Letting that touch our hearts. Acknowledging the common humanity, the common experience that we all share. Everyone in this room has been touched by grief in some form. Everyone in this room has experienced loss in some form. Everyone in this room and everyone we know someday will become sick and pass away. And we can accept that. Not needing to resist or fight the truth of the matter. We were born into this world and will pass from this world. There might be some sadness or grief around that. That's okay. But we don't need to fight this very simple truth. If you feel heaviness or sadness in your heart, let that be there. Feel that, feel the tenderness, feel the vulnerability. It doesn't have to be a problem. This sadness is shared by all of us. This sadness means I'm human. This sadness is the foundation for compassion. Not needing to change or manipulate or fix our experience. Just acknowledging the sadnesses we've shared, that we've experienced, the worries and concerns about the world as it is right now. not needing to make it larger and not needing to make it smaller. But to the extent that we're with this experience, we're not controlled by this experience. That we have the courage and the fortitude, the resilience, confidence and trust to be able to experience sadness or grief or loss, any of these feelings, without them controlling us, without them manipulating us, without having to reactively defend or attack, having this experience. As you're doing this technique, if you wish, you can start turning towards more compassion, empowering yourself, and empowering those that come up in your mind, imagining them, imagining yourself, realizing the truth, receiving good things, being happy, finding freedom from the suffering, from needless resistance. You can use your imagination or your inner voice if you want. To imagine your loved ones, imagine yourself, taking strides on this practice and this path, learning how do I give myself to great love, how can I live a life with more integrity, more character, more value and service, so that I am happy, so that other people are happy, in a genuine, sincere, heartfelt way. Just imagine this happening. Through my practice and through my efforts and actions, I can wake up more and more. And the more I wake up, the more I can be of service to others. And the more service I am to others, the more that they will gain the capacity to also wake up and help others. Acknowledging the suffering that does exist in the world, if not in ourselves, then those we love. And then taking the commitment, the intention, the action that right now, right here, by sitting, I am going to do my part to clarify, to gain peace. And through these efforts, I can serve myself and serve others. And then imagining, realizing happiness, freedom, the well-being that I will have and that others may have through my work and my service. One option, if you want to explore, is in many Tibetan practices, it's customary to try to visualize yourself as a bodhisattva. Imagine yourself as a saint, as a knight, as a being of great spiritual depth and power. Take on the archetype of whoever you wish, whether it's Krishna or Christ or Buddha. Imagine yourself stepping into that power. Imagine yourself with that fire, with that love, helping liberate and serve countless beings across many, many, many planets and worlds. take a 5-minute break if anyone wants to stretch or use the restroom or grab water. there's a training in Buddhism around the four Brahma Viharas, training and cultivating equanimity, compassion, friendliness, and sympathetic joy. So for this next session, we'll practice cultivating sympathetic joy. The joy that comes from witnessing others' happiness, others' joy. For some of us, when we see other people happy, it can sometimes be reacting to jealousy or envy or greed. So this is a practice of retraining that reaction so that when we witness the joy of other people, we can be joyful for them, joyful with them. So to start, once again, establishing mindfulness, your posture, your breath, of your body. Once you've checked in a little bit there, you can bring to mind someone you know, either imaginary or real, of them being happy. Maybe they got a job promotion, maybe they started a relationship, maybe they're just eating a cream. Whatever it is, you can imagine them, either whether it's a memory or you're creating this image of them being happy. And then you can repeat to yourself in your mind, may your happiness continue, may your happiness grow, I'm happy that you're happy. Feeling whatever comes up in your body, continuing to remember or imagine either staying with one person or cycling through different people, with them experiencing joy and happiness, and repeating to yourself either one or all three of these phrases. May your happiness continue, may your happiness grow, I'm happy that you're happy. You're also always welcome to include other beings besides humans, and also imagine future scenarios where someone would be happy or joyful, and wishing them well, that their happiness continues, that their happiness grows, and acknowledging, I'm happy that you're happy. One optional being you can also include in this sympathetic joy would be yourself. Remembering times when you were happy or joyful, or just imagining yourself being happy and joyful. And again, using one or all the phrases, may you continue to be happy, may your happiness grow. I'm happy that we're happy. should have gave fair warning, but I cut the guided meditation by 5 minutes so we have more time to socialize and pack up more easily. So we'll spend the next 25 minutes or so for Q&A, or if anyone has any reports or comments either about tonight or just in general. This would be a great time to share any concerns, questions, reports, insights you might have. Yeah.
When you juxtapose those two practices, it became really apparent to me in a weird way how lopsided I am, and that it seems much easier to connect with the suffering of others than with the happiness of others. For me.
That nuance?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, my experience is, well, for those of us that were at the monastery last week, there's a pendulum, and many of us are biased towards one side of the pendulum than the other side. So it's funny that a lot of times we practice to sort of get these nice, wonderful, blissful states that we read about or we hear about. But in actuality, in my experience, a lot of times that's actually more uncomfortable than the suffering. Suffering I'm at least used to, I'm familiar with, but the bliss and the joy can feel really overwhelming and more frightening than the discomfort. So it's good to know what our tendencies are and make sure we cover all our bases. So I think for a lot of us, experiencing a more free joy can be really frightening or really difficult. Whereas it can be very easy to experience negative emotions, even though we don't want to experience them. So it's good to be aware of that. It's good to try to balance it out. One of the trainings at the academy would be that everyone learns how to develop compassion on demand, so that a lot of people mistakenly believe Buddhism says that everything is suffering, that life is only suffering, and that's not true. So it's okay to feel joy and cultivate joy and compassion too. The question is whether or not you're also willing to experience discomfort and not knowing and not feeling good sometimes. A lot of times the extent that I'm willing and able to feel really bad or feel really good opens me up for the other side of the pendulum. And so we have to be willing to explore both sides of that. Anything else? Michael?
I was thinking of this whole bodhisattva idea, and it strikes me as maybe perchance the way that sort of idea of that commitment is put strikes me as one of the more incongruous ideas out of all the ideas I've heard presented here. And I wondered, I know that's an approach used certainly in certain versions of Buddhism to try to commit to being a bodhisattva and sort of sticking around in that sort of way. But I guess my question ultimately, I sort of wonder too if it's sort of a philosophical error of that sort of approach to think that basically staying in a state of greater illusion than full enlightenment is a service to beings or other kinds of things. Or I mean, I certainly don't think that I could discern, as someone who hasn't gone through those spaces, that making a commitment like that would be an appropriate thing just for the sake of what it's supposed to do, even. And so just a sort of thought and.
Right. So it's almost like it maybe is more beneficial to not postpone awakening to help people?
Well, it's like, should I stick around and be half the same kind of jerk I am or something, rather than, go through to some other state? And I guess the other question is suffering, and the suffering of being sort of something that is transcendable in the state of the infinite, sort of the potential infinity of things, or is it really something that's sort of an emergent process of awakening that's sort of more fundamental to the nature of reality, and thus the idea of it being transcended writ large is not necessarily, I don't know if I would assume that it's possible.
Right.
Or desirable even, maybe.
Right.
As much as the progression through the stages and the ability to have the chance to make a different decision.
Right. So I talk a lot about Buddhist concepts, which there's, 2,500 years of philosophy around. So to some extent, there's a lot of metaphysics and ontology and concepts that we could break down. What's the difference between, say, a bodhisattva and a Buddha, or full enlightenment versus other enlightenments or something. For the purposes of practice, and tonight I would say it doesn't really matter that much. More apropos might be something like I'm suffering, so I'm gonna go to, say, Vietnam or Mexico or something, where the standard of living is very cheap, and I can probably buy a hut for a very cheap amount of money and spend the rest of my life doing my own practice and experiencing a lot of bliss and isolation and not needing to worry about other people. That's an option. I can say from my limited experience, being alone, meditating in a cabin, if you're sufficiently prepared, is extremely enjoyable and very hard, but also very enjoyable. In my experience, comparatively is in the same category as almost any other joy you could experience. So it's very tempting to just want to do that. But people at the academy don't do that, and a lot of traditions don't do that. So in Zen, at least, the idea is that you get awakened, or you do some hard work, and then you go to the marketplace and test your realization of how deep is it really when you start engaging with people. It's not necessarily saying that you shouldn't work on yourself, that you shouldn't develop your character or your concentration or not get awakened or something. Bodhisattva in Buddhism is still perfecting his or her qualities. The main difference is that in classical Buddhism, there's this idea of full nirvana, full enlightenment, where you basically leave existence, and that's a great thing in that system. The goal is to get out of this matrix or prison or something, not be part of this anymore. And so the Bodhisattva is saying, I'm still going to work on awakening, but I'm going to postpone that step where I'm gone from reality, from this world, for the sake of everybody else. But I think more appropriately to apply to our own lives, it's more like, am I going to choose to just care about myself for the rest of my life and shut myself off and arguably still experience a lot of joy and good things? Or am I going to maybe do that, but it's in service to helping people? But by no means is it saying you should be stunted in your own development or growth, or things like that. In fact, one of the big dangers at the academy, the monastery, that Sori often brings up, that I think he's right, is traditionally someone will start something like the monastic academy for the sake of achieving something really hard like awakening, and then over time compromises happen over and over and over again to the point where we just become a nice place where people go to see nature and do short meditations that make you feel good. The temptation is really to actually compromise and not do the inner work. So, if anything, we got to do the inner work. It's just a matter of, is it in service to others, which includes ourselves, or is it primarily just for myself? And arguably, depending on who you ask, early Buddhism was mainly focused on this idea of become a monk, get fully enlightened, escape the world, and that's the highest aspiration. And so the later evolutions changed that to emphasize the service aspect. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the question you're asking is about, imagine a person that's happy, imagine a person who's suffering. And I'm not sure if I got the whole question, but I know that there's great joy in helping somebody who's suffering, and there's great joy in seeing somebody happy. But a person sitting with a person who's suffering and choosing to hang on to their suffering, I find very difficult, very painful. That doesn't want to change, doesn't want help, but just sort of sits there under suffering, and clearly suffering. So.
That's a tough one. Miles is a former resident here that several of you know. He's on a big compassion kick. He's done like 2 or 3 trainings in compassion. So I've become like the expert in compassion pretty soon. And he likes emphasizing the difference between empathy and compassion. So there's a way in which I can empathize with someone that's in suffering, and I can almost kind of take on their skin and become that person. And as you said, if that person feels hopeless about changing and doesn't feel like they have the confidence or trust or faith or ability to change or do anything about it, it can be really hard to be with that person if I'm empathizing with them. Then I feel powerless, I feel hopeless, I feel despair and depressed. Really hard to be with that. And this is a real challenge. So there's a lot of depression and anxiety and bad things going around, and none of us want to be around that. So what Miles might argue, or the Dalai Lama or someone might argue, would be taking on this compassion stance. empathy is the gateway, the doorway to begin the relationship or begin the connection, but you don't stop with empathy. You can switch to compassion, where I just remember just saying, I don't know if it fits, but something like, "Not my circus, not my monkeys." Do y'all know that too?
Not my circus, not my monkey.
Or "Not my monkeys, not my circus." I just read that like a day ago.
It's technically a circus, basically.
So it's sort of like, well, these aren't my monkeys, not my circus. So in that way, you're relating to them and you get the pain and suffering they're in, but then you can turn it and you have the confidence and trust that at the very least I can be with this person. Worst case scenario or best case scenario, I can at least set my boundary of I can't be with this person. I can set that boundary. Actually, it turns out I can't be with this. Have compassion for myself, what I can actually handle, what's actually possible. But it might be available to have hope for them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not 5 years from now, maybe not 10 years from now, maybe not till they're on their deathbed, that they'll actually make a change. But I can have confidence and trust in at least their basic nature. That underneath all of the suffering and trauma and afflictions, conditioning, at their core, they're a living being, not so different from me, and I can have compassion for them, wishing them well, even if that change may or may not happen soon. I think for a lot of us, especially in this profession, in this kind of community, we're so used to helping people and almost trying to do the work for other people. It can be really hard to be with a lot of people. And so somehow I am still figuring this out, but sort of setting this container where I can relate to this person's suffering, but I cannot do their work for them. And how do I not lose trust or faith and actually keep the confidence? But can't do the work for them. And I think to some extent, the deeper pain that I think a lot of us have, I know I definitely have, is acknowledging that I feel helpless and I care about this person. Oftentimes for me that feels more vulnerable and harder to accept than that this person's messed up or needs to fix himself or something. I don't really have an easy answer besides just move towards compassion.
Yeah, I like what you said about just having a hope for the future, like I wish you well for the future. Hope. It's kind of like holding that hope that at some point this person will be writing in some way that's not like getting immersed in the despair, the hopelessness or the helplessness. It's like, okay, well, clearly this person is not able or willing or open, whatever it is that they need. I'm holding up the hope for the future that this person, and that's that kind of compassion part, that this person can at some point. I like that piece I'll take with me.
Yeah. I know I've definitely gone through those stages where I'm with someone in suffering. There's such a great desire for them to be better, feel better, and I can subtly try to suggest things, or give suggestions, or debate their logic that they're in that's self-defeating. And really the sub-communication I'm giving off is, it's not okay where you are right now. You need to change for me. And a lot of times, it actually happens a lot in circle languages, unfortunate. It's kind of feeding that self-judgmental part that person already has that's beating up on themselves. And so, it's funny, a lot of times my role is, I'm sure you're aware as a therapist, is just witnessing and providing space and saying, whatever you're feeling is okay. I'm pretty sure it's not going to always feel this bad every single moment from now on. And I'm okay with just sitting here. I'm not going to go anywhere for the next half an hour or 10 minutes or 2 hours or however much time I can sit. And I'm usually pretty clear. I don't lie to them and say, I want to stay with you as long as you need forever. That's hurtful because they're like, wait, that's not true. I'll say, hey, listen, I have a meeting in 30 minutes. I'm sorry I have to go, but until those 30 minutes come, I'm willing and happy to just be with you for these 30 minutes. And then ask them what they need, what they want to do. Rather than being like, are you sure you can't get a job? Maybe you could listen to Tony Robbins. You know, I read this article about 5 ways to build confidence. That usually doesn't work. And somehow maybe they can leech off some of the equanimity and compassion for themselves, where they go, okay, I don't have to worry about Peter at least. He doesn't seem to be bothered about where I'm at. So maybe where I'm at's not so bad. Maybe I'm not so evil or broken that at least this other person doesn't seem to be bothered by it. So maybe I don't need to be as bothered by it. And then they can actually feel their feelings and feel their experience and relax more. Of course, the people I'm working with are, I think, far less, have more resources, inner resources than I imagine the people you're working with. So I have it a little bit easier than that. But that basic math, I think, still works out. And the more I care, the easier it is for me to react and snap and want to fix them because I feel for them more. And my identification and that empathy, enmeshment becomes more deeper. So it's a real challenge now to do that, but actually have compassion. I don't have to become them. I don't do the work for them. And first and foremost, I just give love. There's this person that Daniel interviewed recently on his podcast, named Zach Stein. He said something like, the foundation for all teaching is love. And that if there isn't love, then there can't be any teaching that happens. So a lot of times when I see people trying to help each other, give feedback, or improve things, if it's not coming from love, then the other person has to be really spiritually mature in order to take that feedback without getting angry. Which we can do. We're all spiritually mature here. But it's a lot easier when you can feel that the feedback or the information or whatever is coming from a place of love, rather than you're doing it wrong, you need to change. So. Tracy?
Hi. While you were talking, I was thinking about how maybe it is for the person you are having compassion for, when their suffering or their joy. And also it's for you, the result. You know, what I was experiencing, first of all, when I came out of the last meditation that you did, was that I recognized as the siren went by, it didn't bother me. And I didn't feel particularly anxious, or, you know, a lot of things had dropped away. And I had been concentrating on someone else's joy that I could have felt jealous of, that I could feel, and this comes on the heels of feeling a lot of compassion for the homeless person on the street within an hour to the same experience of the joy of this person having a birthday who is somewhat okay. And so both experiences, I wonder if it has so much to do with it. What can I do for this person who is suffering on the street? Instead of that question, just that in this time now, I personally have gotten to the place where I could be in either place. You know, I could be that person. I'm not that far away, you know? And I could get really scared and aversion, and, or not. I could choose to just say, oh, I get it. I get where you're at. I get not only that it hurts to be you right now, but also how you got there and how it doesn't feel like you'll ever change. I totally get it, you know, and that's all I can give you. All I can give you is that I get you. And this person who is in a position of security and joy, I felt also the same thing. I get you. You know, because I felt love for her. And so I'm just bringing it to the table that is it possible that the compassion that is most helpful or is for everyone, is for me. You know, it so that I then am more in my meditation and offer more joy and more understanding, but letting go of judgment, you know, which is another thing that you were doing at another time, letting go of judgment. You know, maybe part of really getting to the place where compassion or equal joy and suffering is like, oh, I witness, I see, and I am not judging. I recognize you are me, I am you, we are one, which was another one that we were doing, and we are one, right? So, I mean, you could put it all together, and I don't know where I'm going with this, because I wasn't there when I started, but it seems like that's it.
Yeah, it seems like you intuitively picked up, earlier I mentioned there's these 4 Brahma Viharas, and we kind of did 3 of them, more or less. One is friendliness, or you used to call metta. Then there's compassion, and then there's sympathetic joy, and this 4th one that I think you're speaking on is equanimity, being cool isn't the right word, but sort of able to engage in any condition, any relation, any person, and be there, be present in there. That's really wonderful to be able to, kind of like what we're talking with Ben, of being able to seesaw between both sides of the pendulum without any resistance or any attachment to, you only care about the homeless people, or I only want to be with other people that are doing well, so I won't feel insecure. You know, being able to just move through all of our experiences with all the people is a great aspiration and achievement we can all strive for. Thanks for sharing that. I think I want to close up shop and move on to announcements. Thank you all for coming today. I'll be away likely in the next 2 weeks, so look forward to seeing you in about 2 weeks.